Drop everything or I'll blow your head off. The words exploded from Karen's mouth like a gunshot, her trembling hands gripping a pistol aimed straight at my chest. I froze on the creaky wooden porch of my family's 150-year-old Texas ranch, my heart hammering so loud I could barely think. The golden afternoon sun bathed the rolling fields, the ancient oak by the barn casting long shadows, but all I could see was the glint of steel in Karen's hands. This wasn't just any piece of land. It was my blood, my heritage, a sprawling 200-acre ranch built by my great-great-grandfather in 1875. The weathered red barn, the hand-carved fence posts, the wildflowers swaying in the breeze. It was home, where my wife Ellie and our 6-year-old son Tommy built our lives. And now Karen, the tyrannical HOA president from the new suburban sprawl nearby, was threatening to take it all. She stood there, all 5 feet of her radiating self-righteous fury, her perfectly manicured nails clutching a clipboard in one hand and the gun in the other. Her designer sunglasses perched on her head like a crown, as if she ruled the world. "Sign over the deed, Jake Callahan," she hissed, "or you'll regret it." Her voice dripped with venom, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of desperation. I raised my hand slowly, my mind racing. This wasn't about a property dispute. This was personal. It started weeks earlier with letters and notices, each one more aggressive than the last. The HOA claimed my ranch had been annexed into their jurisdiction, demanding I pay thousands in fees or surrender the land. I'd laughed it off at first. My family's ranch predated their cookie-cutter neighborhood by over a century. My great-grandfather fought off cattle rustlers here. My grandfather survived the Great Depression on this soil, and I'd be damned if I let some power-hungry bureaucrat steal it. But laughter turned to dread when Karen showed up that day, gun in hand, flanked by 2 nervous-looking lackeys in polo shirts. Ellie peeked through the lace curtains of our living room, her face pale as she clutched Tommy close. His wide, scared eyes locked on mine, and I felt a surge of protective rage. "Karen," I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline, "you're making the biggest mistake of your life." She smirked, thinking she had me cornered. "This land belongs to the HOA now," she snapped, waving her forged documents. "Sign, or things get ugly." Her lackeys shifted uncomfortably, clearly not expecting her to pull a weapon. I took a deep breath, my cowboy boots rooted to the porch. I wasn't signing anything. Karen had started a war, but she didn't know who she was messing with. I'd spent my life wrangling cattle and outsmarting storms. This was just another fight, and I was ready to win. The moment Karen stormed off, her threats echoing like a rattlesnake's warning, I knew I had to act fast. I wasn't just fighting for my ranch. I was defending my family's legacy, the land where my ancestors fought rustlers and survived droughts. I locked the door, sat at the kitchen table under the flickering light of our old chandelier, and started digging. Ellie brewed coffee, her hands shaking as she whispered, "Jake, what's she after?" I didn't have all the answers, but I knew Karen's HOA was rotten to the core. I called Maria, a lawyer friend who'd tangled with shady HOAs before. She arrived the next morning, her sharp eyes scanning the stack of threatening letters Karen had sent. "This is fraud," Maria said, pointing to a document claiming my ranch was under HOA jurisdiction. "Your land's been in your family since before Texas was a state. They can't just annex it." She dug deeper, and what we found was a cesspool of corruption. Karen's HOA had been terrorizing the nearby suburban development for years, fining families for minor infractions like unapproved flower beds or kids' bikes left in driveways. Residents were too scared to fight back, paying thousands to avoid her wrath. But my ranch, with its 200 acres of prime, undeveloped land, was their real target. Maria uncovered a paper trail that made my blood boil. Karen had bribed a crooked county official, Harold Vance, to redraw property lines, forging documents to claim my ranch fell under HOA control. The plan? Sell my land to a developer for millions, splitting the profits with her cronies. "They're banking on you folding," Maria said. "Most people would, but I wasn't most people. My great-grandfather once stared down a posse to keep this land. I wasn't about to let a clipboard-wielding bully take it. The more we dug, the uglier it got." Maria found records of Karen's lavish spending. The HOA was drowning in debt, from her renovations to their office, a marble-floored monstrosity, and extravagant business trips to places like Hawaii and Vegas. Residents were footing the bill through skyrocketing fees, and Karen was living like a queen. I spent sleepless nights poring over public records with Maria, fueled by coffee and rage. We interviewed neighbors who whispered about Karen's intimidation tactics, late-night visits, slashed tires, even pets going missing. One elderly couple, the Millers, tearfully admitted they'd paid $10,000 in fines to avoid losing their home. Then, a wild idea hit me. The HOA was a private entity, and its financial mismanagement was a gaping weakness. If I could buy its controlling shares, I could seize power from Karen and undo her schemes. Maria raised an eyebrow. "It's bold, Jake, but it could work. The HOA's desperate for cash, and shareholders might jump at a good offer." It was a long shot. I wasn't a tycoon, just a rancher with some savings and a stubborn streak. But the thought of turning Karen's greed against her lit a fire in me. I wasn't just fighting to save my ranch. I was going to take her empire down. The idea of buying the HOA was insane. I was a rancher, not a tycoon. My savings from years of cattle dealing weren't enough to pull this off alone, but giving up wasn't in my blood. My great-grandfather once faced down bandits to protect this ranch, and I'd do the same. I sat with Ellie at our worn kitchen table, the weight of the fight sinking in. "Jake, this could ruin us," she whispered, her eyes searching mine. Tommy was asleep upstairs, oblivious to the storm brewing. "If we don't fight, we lose everything," I replied. She nodded, squeezing my hand. That was all I needed, to dive in. I started by liquidating assets. I sold 20 acres of non-essential grazing land, a gut punch since every inch of the ranch felt sacred. Next, I cashed out part of my retirement fund, a risky move that made Ellie's face tighten with worry. I called old ranching buddies, guys like Pete, who'd made a fortune in oil, and Clara, who ran a feed store chain. They'd invested in my cattle business years ago and trusted my grit. Over beers at the local diner, I laid out my plan. Buy the HOA's controlling shares and stop Karen's land grab. Pete slapped the table, grinning. "You're crazier than a bull in a thunderstorm, Jake, but I'm in." Clara pledged $50,000, her eyes gleaming with defiance. "Give that witch what she deserves," she said. Maria connected me with Jack, a financial advisor who'd outsmarted corporate sharks. Jack was a wiry guy with a quick laugh and a mind like a steel trap. He saw the HOA's debt as a golden opportunity. "Karen's bled them dry," he said, poring over financial records at my dining table. "Shareholders are desperate. They'll sell if the price is right." We identified key players, disgruntled homeowners, small investors, even a retired banker who hated Karen's guts. But reaching them was tricky. Karen had spies everywhere, and we couldn't risk her catching wind of our plan. We worked in secret, meeting in the barn under the guise of farm business. Jack drafted offers, while Maria ensured every contract was airtight. I spent nights on the phone, convincing shareholders to sell. Some were scared, others skeptical. One, Mrs. Delgado, a widow who'd been fined $5,000 for planting roses, cried as she agreed to sell her shares. "Karen threatened to foreclose on my home," she whispered. Her story fueled my rage. But challenges piled up. My loan application for additional funds was nearly denied when a bank manager, suspiciously cozy with Harold Vance, stalled the process. Maria pulled strings to get it approved, but time was tight. Karen wasn't idle. Her goons escalated their intimidation. One night I caught a thug sneaking toward my barn with a gas can, his shadow flickering in the moonlight. I tackled him. my fists shaking with fury, and held him until the sheriff arrived. He confessed Karen had paid him to scare us, maybe burn the barn. The sheriff, an old friend, promised to keep eyes on Karen, but her influence ran deep. Every step felt like walking through a snake pit. Yet, with Jack's number crunching, Maria's legal savvy, and my stubborn resolve, we raised enough to make an offer for the HOA's majority shares. As we sent the proposal, I stood on the porch, staring at the stars, praying this gamble would save our home. The day of the HOA board meeting felt like walking into a lion's den. My boots echoed on the polished marble floor of their sleek office, a monument to Karen's greed, paid for by extorted homeowner fees. Maria walked beside me, her briefcase stuffed with acquisition papers, her calm demeanor steadying my nerves. My heart raced, not from fear but from the weight of what was at stake. This was it, the moment to save my family's 150-year-old ranch and crush Karen's empire. The boardroom was a glass-walled cage, filled with nervous shareholders and Karen's loyalists, their eyes darting as we entered. Karen sat at the head of the table, her manicured nails tapping impatiently, a smug grin plastered on her face. She thought I was there to grovel, to beg for mercy after her gunpoint threats. "Well, well, cowboy," she sneered, leaning back in her leather chair. "Come to surrender your little farm?" I didn't flinch. "Not quite," I said, my voice low but firm. I nodded to Maria, who opened her briefcase and slid a thick stack of papers across the table. The room fell silent, the air thick with tension. The chairman, a balding man named Mr. Thompson, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, adjusted his glasses and began reading. Karen's smirk faltered as she leaned forward, snatching a copy. Her eyes scanned the pages, and I saw the exact moment realization hit. Her face drained of color, her lips parting in a silent gasp. "What is this?" she demanded, her voice rising to a shrill pitch. "You can't be serious." The papers were our offer, a cash deal to buy the HOA's controlling shares, backed by every cent I'd scraped together, every favor I'd called in, every sleepless night of planning with Jack and Maria. The shareholders, many of whom despised Karen for her bullying, leaned in, whispering excitedly. Mr. Thompson cleared his throat. "Mr. Callahan's offer is substantial," he said, glancing nervously at Karen. "It addresses the HOA's debts and offers a premium to shareholders." The room buzzed as Karen's loyalists protested, but the numbers spoke louder. The HOA was drowning in debt from Karen's lavish spending, and my offer was a lifeline. Karen slammed her fist on the table, her sunglasses falling to the floor. "You can't do this!" she screamed, her face twisting with rage. "I built this HOA! You're nothing but a dirty rancher!" I leaned forward, locking eyes with her. "You built a house of cards, Karen, and it's collapsing." The board voted, and one by one hands went up in favor of my offer. Mr. Thompson's voice was steady. "The motion passes. We're selling to Mr. Callahan." The room erupted in gasps and murmurs. I was now the majority owner of the HOA. Karen lunged toward me, but Maria stepped in, cool as ice. "Sit down, Karen, or you'll make this worse." My first act as president was to nullify the fraudulent annexation of my ranch, erasing Karen's forged claims with a single signature. My second? I turned to the board and said, "Effective immediately, Karen is evicted from this office and removed from all HOA duties." Her scream could have shattered glass as the sheriff, waiting outside, stepped in to escort her out. She clawed at the air, hurling insults. "You'll regret this, Callahan." But I stood tall, watching her empire crumble. The shareholders applauded, some even cheering. Justice felt like a cold drink on a hot Texas day. With Karen gone, the air felt lighter, like the first breeze after a Texas storm. As the new HOA president, I had a chance to right her wrongs, not just for my family, but for the entire community she'd terrorized. The ranch was safe, its 200 acres still ours. the wildflowers swaying under the same stars my ancestors gazed at. But this victory was bigger than my porch. It was about justice, about showing bullies like Karen that they can't break people who stand together. I sat down with Maria and Jack the next morning, the weight of my new role sinking in. The HOA's books were a mess, its rules a labyrinth of petty tyranny. We got to work, rewriting the bylaws to protect homeowners, not exploit them. First, I banned the predatory fines that had crushed families. $500 for a mailbox painted the wrong shade of blue. $2,000 for a kid's swing set deemed unsightly. I held a community meeting in the local high school gym, expecting a few dozen people. Over 200 showed up, their faces a mix of hope and exhaustion. Mrs. Delgado, the widow Karen had bullied over her roses, stood up, her voice trembling. "You gave us our homes back," she said, tears in her eyes. The room erupted in applause, and I felt a lump in my throat. I wasn't just saving my ranch, I was giving these folks their dignity back. We slashed dues, redirected funds to fix potholes and build a playground, and set up a transparent board where residents had a voice. The HOA went from a dictatorship to a community lifeline. At home, the change was just as profound. Ellie, who'd spent weeks on edge, smiled again, her laugh echoing as she chased Tommy through the fields. One evening, Tommy tugged at my sleeve, holding up a drawing of our ranch with a big red heart around it. "Is it really safe now, Dad?" he asked, his blue eyes wide. I knelt down, ruffling his hair. "It's safe, buddy. This is our home, forever." That night we sat on the porch, the creak of the old swing blending with the cricket's song. Ellie leaned against me, her hand in mine, as we watched the stars twinkle over the land my family had held for 150 years. The barn stood proud, the oak tree a silent sentinel, and I knew my great-grandfather would have been proud. Karen's defeat spread like wildfire. Neighbors stopped by with homemade pies and thank you notes, calling me the cowboy who took down the queen. Rumors swirled that Karen had skipped town, humiliated, though some said she was plotting a comeback. Let her try. I was ready. This fight taught me that legacy isn't just land. It's the courage to stand up, the community you build, the family you protect. The ranch was more than a place. It was a symbol of what we could overcome together.